Okay, so you already know me, but this is my other personality. I also give talks. João, can we have my slides? Perfect. So we're gonna talk now about the impact of digital nomads. We already mentioned this subject. Do you recognize this lovely crowd? Yeah? And conference, that was a week ago. I was part of this festival. So, okay, guys, after all that you heard, what do you think? Do nomads have a positive or negative impact on the destinations where they go, or where we go? Others, what do you think? Okay, so it's actually a false dilemma. Do you know what's the false dilemma? That's when the question induces you to think that it can be only one or other. It's actually both. The reality is that any global mobility, be it digital nomadism, be it immigration, be it tourism, there is always a negative and positive effect. It's not really possible to travel without any negative effects. I talk a lot about positive impact. That's the easy part. We want to talk about what we do well, what we did the best. We want to show examples. We have also the panel after this talk where we actually gonna show examples of positive impact. But for this talk, I wanted to show a big picture, okay? So it's important to understand we do have some negative impact, but we also have a positive one. Now, how big is the negative one? Here in Canary Islands, remote workers is 1% of tourism. So to the claims that were already talked by Gonzalo, Dean, and Maya, are digital nomads responsible for gentrification? So how can 1% be responsible for the effects, right? Having said that, we contribute. We contribute in a scale of 1%. And as we think, there are even estimations that by 2035, there will be 1 billion of remote workers, from whom many can travel at least for a few months. It's important that we talk about that now, before we are a bigger group. Okay, so for me, the way I approach it, the right question is, how do we maximize a positive impact and how do we minimize a negative one? That's how I approach this conversation. And before we reply to this question, I have a next question for you. Who do you think responsibility is that? Is it government, local organization, or individual ones? After everything that you have heard, what do you think? Tricky question? Anybody? Both? Is that the common answer? Okay. You have learned. That's a false dilemma again, yes. And by the way, work from office or work from home is also a false dilemma question. It's not one or other. It can be both. And hybrid is even a third option. So it's important that we question things. And we don't only question the questions, we don't only question the answer, we also have to question the questions. Because if the question is formulated in the wrong way, then most likely it leads to the wrong answer. I don't know how many of you are aware, but there is right now quite big negative press on the impact of digital nomads. The titles like, are nomads ruining everything? Are nomads the new gentrifiers? Are nomads ruining the places where they travel to? And in some way, that already suggests the answer, right? We focus on the negative part. We don't focus on the big picture. So it's important, every time you see that, you look into the real data. And so let's remember in Canary Islands, it's less than 1% remote workers. And then you think about the bigger picture. And now we're gonna talk a little bit like how we can do that. So this is actually like two sides of the same coin, how to decrease the negative impact of digital nomadism and then how to increase the positive one. And first thing that we need to do is to build awareness. Awareness has to be built on both sides, like both nomads, communities, but also locals, government, tourist associations. As of now, I still don't think like this awareness is enough. On individual sides, many people are really not aware what impact they have. They don't really think if they have any. And from sides of government and organizations, they also don't think too much about the long term. They do want to attract nomads, like you see all these countries now launching like digital nomad visas, nomad programs. There are now like more than 60 nomad visas. They do want to bring nomads, but mostly they think about the economical impact because those millions of euros, that's what moves them into that. But they don't plan really like long term. They don't think what are the consequences long term. They don't think about integration. So for that reason, I feel our biggest job right now is actually building awareness on both sides. Like this really gonna have an impact, and with each year more and more, because we're gonna be more people. Even if that billion in 2035 sounds optimistic, it's a good chance we will be many, many millions soon. And so what I think has to be done on government side, they need really like a proper long-term strategy. So it's not only how to bring nomads, but what to do with them. Once they come, how to manage them. And that also means like connecting them to the locals, integrating, creating a community, but it's not a community of nomads in a bubble, but community of nomads connected to locals, which is something that Nacho actually is already doing. But yes, but I would say that he is an exception as of now. In most countries, even if they have remote work programs, they don't really think what to do with people once they come. They just hope they come. So one thing that has to be done on this side is having like proper strategy, usually consulting nomads, having the campaign, having the budget, and working on that long term. That's really a full-time job. But then, and now I agree with Dean, we cannot put everything on government or tourist association, because we, as nomads, also have individual responsibility. So if you go to any new destination, and there is really no organization or no government or no digital nomad association, like nobody thinking about that, then there is still a lot that you can do individually as a person. And one thing that you can do is actually first choosing the destination, right? Because if you go to the overcrowded tourist spot or nomad hotspot that are already very popular, then you are not necessarily helping, right? Those claims about gentrification, you in certain way contributing. A little bit, but you are. So one way to think about that as an alternative is to consider emerging destination, or at least to go there out of the season. Maybe you can be in the same country but in a different place. And again, what we are trying to do here, what Nacho is doing in Agaete is that, because Las Palmas is already a hotspot, but Agaete is not. So it can be even the same country, right? Just a different town. And that's where we decentralize. And in a small town, the impact that you can have on people is often bigger. Another thing is, if you go to the destination, it's important to live like a local. Don't just use like tourist setup, but think like what those people do, where they buy, right, the groceries, where they live. Again, with terms of accommodations, I don't think we should be using Airbnb as nomads. Yeah. not like for 1 month or 2 months, because then you actually using a tourist setup, right? So if you want to live like a local, go there for a few days, it's okay, but try to find accommodation at a market price. Try to negotiate, try to integrate, try to find the people that are there, what they are doing, respect the culture. These all definitely decrease a negative impact. That also allow us to get out of the bubble and connect. And connecting and integrating is actually an important step in achieving any long-term positive impact. Because all those things that we often talk about, like nomads can bring innovation, knowledge, cultural exchange, they only happen if nomads are connected to locals. If nomads stay in a bubble, nothing of this really ever comes true. And yeah, so it's a lot about like how you use your time and also where you spend your money. So if you pay for things, try to buy from small local businesses. Maybe like some family restaurant, local clothes, anything. Then you are really contributing, right? It's always both sides, like positive and negative. So by contributing to small local businesses, you are already having a positive impact. And now a little bit, nice. That's examples, we're gonna get there. On the other side, how do you increase the positive one? So again, like by building awareness, you are already doing a lot. But I also do think that sometimes it's very hard to do something. Because you are in a new destination, you don't speak the language, there are cultural barriers, you don't really have time, you don't know where to go, you don't know anybody. So even if you want to do something, sometimes it's really hard. And I think this is the main reason, or several reasons, why nomads stay in bubbles. It's not because they don't want to get off the bubble, but that's the easiest thing. And they sometimes just don't know what to do otherwise. That's why I think that the solution is building a bridge, especially if there is a language barrier. And that bridge is some sort of community organization that will connect nomads to locals. And again, Nacho is doing that in Gran Canaria, but in many places that doesn't really happen yet. This bridge can be built like both by nomad community leaders or government or tourist organizations. Any co-living or co-working could be used as a bridge. And then when you have that bridge, people that want to help or want to give back or want to have impact, they just go there and ask like what I can do, right? How I can help. And it really sometimes can be very small things, but when we do that in masses, they matters. And so last but not least, if you go somewhere and there is nothing, there is again no bridge, you still can do something, right? You can take the ownership. And how you can do that, right? Because it's very generic, perhaps. So these are some real-life examples, in this case from Cape Verde. When we arrived there, there was like a very small community of nomads, but very disconnected from any local people. So I thought like, well, we don't really travel to Africa to hang out with other Germans or British people. We travel there to also meet the locals, right? So how we can do to connect to those local and get to know the country more. And one thing I did myself, because there was really nothing, right? So I could just say, I can't connect to locals. But then I thought, maybe I can organize something myself, right? And that was our first event. We connected with a local startup. And then we started organizing events with them regularly. They were actually very open to this. That happened literally like 2 weeks after I arrived there. This sticker might be too far. Another thing you can do is supporting small local business, right? It maybe seems small, but it really matters. So small local business, they were selling soaps. Those guys, they have a startup that actually creates authentic experiences. So I also help them to introduce their products for nomads. Then exploring the culture, this one also matters. Even if you think, well, what actually I'm contributing by exploring. So this becomes sort of a bridge, because people come there, they connect, they meet each other, and then some business relationship starts. Like you wouldn't even expect, but some people actually found someone that then later sold them a house. But they would never did otherwise if they wouldn't meet and connect. So first step is really often just to show up, even if it's that easy as for drinks, and talk to those people, rather than being only with other nomads. Playing group sports, again, because this builds a team spirit. There is like, I have no idea how to play football, but I still played. Because when we are in a team, it doesn't matter anymore, like, are you a nomad or local? Sometimes we didn't even know what's the other people's name, but we were a team. And this, by the way, is an example how you can overcome a language barrier. Because sometimes people tell to me, well, I don't speak Portuguese. You can still do something with locals. Maybe it will not be a talk, but you can play. And we also use that. We did, for instance, karaokes. And somehow, yes, somehow people didn't speak Portuguese, or the locals didn't speak English, but they know all the popular songs, even in Spanish and Italian, and they can sing together, right? It's, in some countries, it's easier to do something than in others. It depends where you are. But with this line of thinking, like, okay, what small thing I can do, you realize that there are more things that you could thought. Then we organize skill sharing. So again, with that community from local startup. But we could only organize that because first we met for drinks, and we met each other, and we talked what we are doing. And they were super curious about nomadism. That's not something that happens in Africa, right, for locals yet. They were curious how you travel, how you can get a job in IT. So we talk about all that. They shared like about the local startup community, about the local technology. So you can learn a lot. Even some project happened between those people that otherwise wouldn't met. And that's my favorite way, actually, of giving back. I like to mentor students about remote work. Sometimes they invite me, but sometimes I just go and say, so, hey, I could give a talk about that if you are interested. And then it turns out a lot of people are actually interested, because even if for you that's a norm, in some countries, remote work is absolute novelty. Nobody works remotely. They don't know how to do that, how to get there. So you just by showing up and doing what you do, you don't really have to do more than that. You are already having an impact. Some people told me that they want to be nomads now. We'll see. So takeaways, I think my time is almost over. The most important part is to build awareness. Perhaps you already have, because you are here and you are also in Agaete. So we are actually proving what we are talking, right? We are not in a big spot. But by sharing, even on your social media, what we are doing here or what you are doing here, you are helping to build awareness. Then when you see any articles, it's important to back that up with data, or at least to question, right? Like, is that real? Like, are nomads ruining destinations? Show me the data, right? Because that's the only conversation that we should have. And then take the individual responsibility. If nothing is done, nobody did anything, then think what you can do as an individual nomad. I know it sometimes looks like maybe one person cannot have big impact. But I maybe influenced already 10 people, right? That may be not much, but those 10 people go around the world and influence. Even if one of them, one person, then we already have 100 people that we change. This is how we count impact, by scaling. It multiplies. And I would like to invite you to think about that one, the last takeout for you. What you can do, you personally, to have some impact here in Agaete this week that you are staying at the festival. That's it, but you already know me. The only thing that's perhaps new that I actually founded a company that's called the Remote Impact, and that helps destinations and organizations to prepare like long-term strategy how to bring and manage nomads. And if you want to connect with me, so you can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, you can scan this code. I will be here all the day and also the whole next week. So that's all from me for now. Thank you.